trap. Many are in a trap. You're in a trap. You're in a trap. You're in an emotional trap. You're in a mental trap. You're in a situation where you stay bound. And you ain't recognize it. You stay bound. I think I briefly mentioned yesterday about a couple days ago, about two reflections, two mirrors. And there's somebody that listen to me. You're reflecting two things. You're reflecting God. You're reflecting the enemy. You're reflecting good stuff. You're reflecting bad stuff. It's because you've given your heart to two things. You're divided. And the scripture says, even when it comes to division and comes to a master, two lords, you cannot serve two gods. You cannot serve two masters. You're going to love one and hate the other. It's just simple. And see, the thing about it, listen to me, your Lord and your master is your emotions. Your emotions. Your emotions is supreme in your life. You lean to everything toward your emotion, how you feel. How you feel, your intuition, all of that kind of stuff. But you know what, have you considered God? Because God is not an emotion, He's truth. He's the Word. The scripture says that man should not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. In that, what leads a believer is those that are led by the Spirit shall be called the sons of God. So to be led, that means you got to trust. You got to have faith. You got to have confidence. You got to have hope. Can't be getting all emotional. And so, see, God wants to lead you. He wants to lead you out of that situation. He wants to lead you out of your mind, your mindset. Many of you are imprisonated in your own mind. Because you've been indoctrinated with things. You've been indoctrinated with hurt, disappointments, and all of that. And so now in your mind, you're bound. And someone asked the question. I want to get to it. Someone asked the question. And they said, well, you always talk about being free and not living in your emotions. Well, how do you do that? Okay, let me explain. The way to live and not to live in your emotions is by getting temperance. Temperance is self-control. Temperance is self-control. That means to control your urges. But how does a person get to a point where they're able to control their emotions? And the way to control your emotions, first of all, you got to get healed. You got to get healed. A lot of times we're emotional because there's something that's not right that's making us become emotional. Especially when it comes to fear and anger. And see, the thing about emotions is not emotion is an energy. Emotion stems from something. Emotion, even anger. Anger is not an emotion. Anger is not, it's emotional, it's an expression of emotion, but anger is not an emotion. Anger comes from rejection, hurt, something that creates anger. Anger is created. That's why the scripture said you can be angry, but don't sin. Don't let the sun go down to your wrath. And so there's a place of being angry, but see, that place of being angry is a place where you get to a place where you say enough, where you make choices and when you make decisions to do what's right. So that's why the scripture said be angry, but in your being angry, seek God. Seek Him. And that's the place where God is speaking, and that's the place where most of all of us warfare is at, in our anger, in our emotions, where we feel a certain kind of way. And many of you are listening, but you can't control it. It feels like you can't control it, but you can. One of the things, you have to shift your mindset. And let me give you a couple of scriptures. One is in Proverbs 16:32. And it's temperance. It's temperance, and the scripture says, it's self-control. It says that he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty. That's Proverbs 16:32. He that's slow to anger. So when you're slow to anger, that means that your process, you ain't reacting, but you're thinking when stuff come to you. You ain't just reacting, you want something to touch you, someone just go off. No. That's called self-control. That's maturity. And that comes with time. But also it says that he that rules his spirit is mightier than one who take the city. When you're able to rule your spirit, you're greater than anyone who takes the city. when you're able to rule your spirit. And how do you rule your spirit? You rule your spirit by the word, the scriptures. Scripture said to just live by faith. We don't live by what we feel, our emotions, our moods, because our five senses is connected to our flesh. It's connected to carnality. And the scripture says that the carnal mind is an enmity against God. Carnality. So those are some of the words that I wanted to speak to you today. But also, let me give you a definition of temperance. Temperance is also in self-control, is moderation in act. Temperance, to be able to control your feelings, to be able to control your emotions, is to be moderation in act or feelings and restraints. So in other words, you're engaging. God is teaching you how to manage, how to deal with. Also, a habitual moderation in indulgence of appetites and passions. There again, a moderation. And a moderation is something that's not excessive. What you have to do, you have to give yourself, you have to think through certain things. You have to give yourself certain restrictions. You have to give yourself certain boundaries. You have to talk to yourself, well, I'm not going to do this. And just like with managing money, managing things, I'm only going to take a certain amount of money to do this. And if it's over that, I can't do that. And so it's all about self-control. It's all about controlling and not being wild or wilding, because when you're wild and wilding, that's out of control. You can't think. That's when you're wild and wilding, that's not the spirit of God. That's the spirit of the enemy. And see, the enemy moves and operates when things are not wild, because when things are wild, when you become wild, you out of control. And God deals with order. God is an order of order. God is a God of order, not chaos. When something is wild, it's chaotic. That's not God. That's confusion. God is not the author of confusion. I hope these words, these brief words,